As discussed, my name is Marc Jackson. I'm a QSA with MegaplanIT. I've been doing QSA work for the last 4 years, roughly. So what that means is I kind of got my feet solidly on the ground when it comes to PCI 3.2.1, and then as I was feeling comfortable, we went into 4.0. And the point of this discussion, I think, is when the council started asking for topics. I want to say it was probably around May, late May. And at that point, we were well into 4.0 being used as a framework. However, at that point, I really had no clients that had done it. Nobody wanted to do it beforehand. Everyone was getting to that March 31st deadline, and I thought it'd be a good idea to kind of discuss some of the new controls from a very high level, some of the pitfalls that now we've seen as a team and I've seen, and any advice or tidbits or help that we can maybe pass along to folks as they navigate their way through 4.0.1. So again, the common challenges we were looking at, and we kind of divided them into 4 different segments. You've got your technical controls, access controls, software development, and process improvement. And what I've done is I've kind of cherry-picked 5. I only have 20 minutes, but I cherry-picked 5 of the new controls, kind of in each one of those realms, and want to give you a very high-level discussion about what that means, what we're looking for. For those of you who were on the edge of your seats waiting for discussion on 6.4.3 and 11.6, you can respectfully exit now if you'd like, because we are not going to discuss that. I think there's actually a talk in about an hour that's going to go over all that. There's been a lot of things out there, a lot of things being said. I just really didn't want to go down that road. So apologies if that was on your bucket list. Multi-factor. So I'm showing my age with Oprah here. But I kind of feel like this is where we're at with MFA. So 8.4.2, MFA is implemented across all non-console access into the CDE. What's the change there? Obviously, we used to have access, all remote access, and then non-console access administrative. Now what 4.0.1 is saying that all folks entering the CDE need to have MFA. And some of the pain points we're seeing there is not so much from a technical standpoint. I think MFA is implementing it is becoming kind of mainstream, but we are getting a lot of the folks saying, "Hey, Mark, I'm getting my phone's blowing up. We're having help desk issues. People can't log in. They're dependent on their phone. We got some privacy issues with that. What can we do?" And I guess my big overarching point to that is to really have a good knowledge base of what your CDE is. A lot of folks who come into, when we start doing assessment and we do consulting work, we kind of just start talking and it's like, okay, maybe that is part of your CDE, but maybe this isn't. And the point of kind of how to reduce your CDE access is everybody that you think needs access to the CDE, do they really need it? To kind of get off that struggle of the complaints, the lockouts, etc. One of the other things I wanted to bring up is a recently published FAQ, 1595 and 1596. And I'm not going to dive into this too much. I just wanted you to know that it's there. And it starts to talk about passkeys, and then what that looks like and how they can be used within your environment. Just know that I think it's 1596 discusses that if passkeys are configured correctly, they do meet the phishing, resistant access controls to meet the MFA requirement. So I will let you dig into those if you'd like. Read up on passkeys. And there is some benefits to that. So if it's something you want to dive into, obviously that's your prerogative. And as far as real world scenarios, I had this originally and I kind of second guessed myself here because everyone's environment is so different. But what I will say is that even up into this month, I was doing an assessment and I think I found 2 SMEs who had admin access. I think one was to the AV console or logging or something like that. And they didn't have MFA enabled. And so it's still out there that folks are not instituting that maybe where they should. And then let me back up 1 second too, is with some of the pain points with MFA is, MFA fatigue is a real thing. Folks are getting all these MFA notifications sometimes, and it could be definitely a vector of non-nice things. So let's just keep that in mind as we go through that. Again, who needs it and who doesn't. Application and system accounts. So, 7251, all access and application and system accounts and related access privileges are reviewed as follow. So, what are application and system accounts? I sometimes referred to as service accounts, non-human accounts used by applications and systems. And I think what the council is trying to do here, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but these accounts usually have elevated access to databases and critical systems, which, if not managed properly, can be a very sore point of access into the CDE from folks who don't need to have it. And I think what happens here too is some of these application and system accounts, you spin up a new application for whatever it is, and they kind of go by the wayside, and folks forget what they're used for, where they're at. Do they actually even need to have those accounts any further within their environment? As far as visibility, who's giving you that list? Who's creating that list of application and service accounts? Do you have the right people in the room? Are you asking your application owners? Are you asking your system owners? And part of the issue with this is a pretty manual exercise. Now there are ways to automate this, and there could be a monetary issue there. But again, anything that's becoming a manual process is prone to some errors. So make sure you get the right people in the room, you're getting the right list. And then again, the TRAs. So we need to have a TRA for how often they are reviewed and their frequency. We'll talk about TRAs here in a second, but the TRA for the PCI guidance is these should be reviewed every 6 months. Do you have to follow that exactly? No, but that is what the council is saying that their recommendation is. On to software development. Inventory of bespoke and custom software and third-party software components are incorporated into the bespoke and custom software is maintained to facilitate vulnerability and patch management. So I think the underlining, I think we talked about before, I said I'm trying to give you some of the reasons or the spirit of the control. Not only is having this list available and knowing what it is, I think the root underlying cause is you really need to incorporate this into your vulnerability management. So you've got a list, great. Now, how are you using that list? Is it going into your vulnerability management cycle to make sure that you are getting patches, configuration, et cetera, done correctly? And then what are we looking for in this list? We're looking for, at the very least, version. What's the purpose of this software in the environment where they're being used? And while the council, there's really, to put it, this controller leads itself to having some sort of SBOM list, software bill of management. And again, this is probably best being done, depending on your environment, by some automated process. If you're a smaller organization that doesn't have a whole lot of third-party software, it definitely can be done manually. The problem with the manual aspect is once you've been done reviewing it manually, is a possibility of new patches, releases that are out there that you maybe didn't catch. Risk assessment. So 12.3 talks about risks to the kernel data environment are formally identified, evaluated, and managed. This is kind of a curious one. TRAs. What we're seeing, I didn't think we were going to have too many problems with TRAs, but we are. And the purpose of the TRA is to, and take a step back. We went from having an annual risk assessment to having the ability to use TRAs. And I believe out of all, if you're in scope for, let's say, everything within a full level 1 ROC, you're looking at a possibility of 9 TRAs are the most. But the good thing about TRAs is it's giving folks and corporations a frequency, a flexibility of the frequency to adjust based on the changing landscape in the environment. Maybe you did a risk assessment and all of a sudden something changes within the industry, and now you can go back and do your TRAs and look to see what the frequency should be. What's the format of a TRA? Basically, the guidance on this and what I've been telling my folks is it can have whatever form you'd like, as long as you meet what the requirement says in 12.3.1. And I won't go through all of it, but if you look at the requirement 12.3.1, it'll list what you have to have in a TRA. And obviously, there is a template that is given by the council, which is what I usually tell my folks to do. Is use this template, and you should be pretty good. Who's reviewing them and how often? Again, this goes back to having the right folks, doing kind of the right jobs. Do you have to send your application team the TRA? Do you have to send your antivirus folks the TRA? Etc. So it's part of this is having a good pipeline and communication within your organization of giving them and sending out the TRAs to the folks that know what needs to be done. And one thing I wanted to hit upon is it's not on the slide, but it was discussed yesterday at the assessors meeting. I guess there's been a lot of questions about can we use a TRA to, let's say, increase our firewall reviews. So firewalls say, every 6 months. The answer is no. The only time you can use a TRA is if in the control you actually see the verbiage of a TRA and frequency. I haven't run into that yet, but supposedly that's come up a lot. And the other thing with the TRAs I got coming back is, I've got the gamut of, Marc, how do I do this? No clue. To some folks needed a little bit of advice and some guidance. Number 4 on that list, it talks about describe the analysis. That seems to be the biggest one I'm seeing. And basically, I just kind of ask folks, tell me why you came up with the number you did. What went into your thought process? Why did you say this needs to be reviewed once a year? This needs to be reviewed every quarter. And of course, you can't have scope creep if you never define your scope. So 12.5.2, you have to now define and document your scope every 12 months, unless you're lucky enough to be a service provider, and then you have to do it every 6 months, or upon significant change. And this is kind of where I get into the whole kind of garbage in, garbage out, and what good data looks like. And I got a few minutes here. What I didn't tell you before I started this is I was a cop for 20 years. And in that profession, we had a lot of data sets. We collected a lot of data from, you name it, suspects, offenders, traffic stops. And we had it was a cool case we worked on. I'm telling you a story because I think cop stories are a lot better than PCI stories. But we had a crew that was running around and they were doing robberies of usually young women as they were pulling into their driveway. And we caught one, and she was followed out of a Walmart. I looked at the tape, and I was a car buff then, and I kind of still am now, and I'm watching the tape, and I see this Pontiac Aztek, and I'm like, yes, right? I'm like, Aztek. For those who don't know what the Pontiac Aztek is one of the most ugliest cars ever built. And if you owned one, I apologize, I didn't mean to offend anybody. I know they're good for camping. But the point of the story is, within an hour, I was in our database looking up, and there's Pontiac Aztek that I was looking for because we had good data coming in, and we had these guys arrested by the morning time. So your scope is only as good as the data and the effort you put into it. When we talk about data, defining your scope, we're looking for all data flow stages, capture, auth, et cetera, and then streams, e-commerce, card present. We need updated data flows diagrams. We need to ID where all credit card data is stored, processed, and transmitted. We need to ID systems in the CDE, connected to the CDE, and impact security of the CDE. Third-party connections with access to the CDE, if any. And then, of course, segmentation controls with justification for being out of scope. And what we've been doing as a team at MegaplanIT is our advice is basically, take the executive summary and fill that out, and maybe slap some historical chart on the bottom of that, and discuss, who reviewed it, when, any changes to the CDE that need to be addressed. Again, there's other ways to skin that cat, but that seems to be, it's something I need to do an assessment anyways, and then they can take that document and keep filling it out as the years go by. And there is, something you can argue within the standard that this should be done. This should not be done 2 weeks into an assessment. This really should be discussed, documented, much prior to the assessment, so that there's no surprises. We don't have that scope creep issue. So key takeaways, again, just a quick little ending slide here, what we talked about as far as technical controls, access controls, software development, risk and scope. Again, this was meant to be a quick flyover of some of the new controls, what we're seeing, how maybe we can assist, give you some advice, any kind of consulting. That being said, if I threw anything out there that was totally out of left field, or you didn't understand, or you want some more clarification on, please come see myself or any of our team members at our booth, and we would be more than happy to help you out. With that being said, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.